Welcome to All Lacrosse Live. It's Sunday night, 9 o'clock. I'm Gary Groob in Toronto. With me, I have Shawn Slaght in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. How you doing, Shawn?
Doing pretty good. How you doing, Gary?
Excellent. And I have Muffler Mike Kostiuk over in Connecticut. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Gary.
Another great week of lacrosse. I'm telling you, man, it's exciting. We've had a couple of just absolute barn burner games with Man Cup. We're into the thick of things with the PLL. We just came out of I believe the last round of the NLL draft just happened about 12 minutes ago from yesterday afternoon. It's a long draft, man. It's a long process. But we had a great time yesterday over at the NLL draft, and some great names got picked. A few surprises here and there, but overall, I don't think there was anything that was too, shall we say, moments. So... But just before we get going, I just want to show everybody all the shows here on Edge of Philly. As you can see, Monday through Sunday, we can keep you busy with just about anything that you want. Just have a look at this. You can get onto the Edge of Philly site, eopsports.com, and you can take a look at any and all of these shows. If you can't make the shows when they are being broadcast, you can catch them on YouTube. You can catch them on Twitter, Twitch, any of the social media platforms. All these guys are doing fantastic jobs, and these are excellent shows. Anything you want sports-wise, we are your source for sports here at edgeofphilly.com. All right, guys. Let's start off with the Man Cup, shall we? We had two really, really great games. One that was not as close as the other. The game last night was just off the rails. We'll get to that in a few minutes. It had absolutely everything, and then some, including controversy. But I want to talk, and I was talking with a couple of the guys who were on Peterborough at the draft about it. I want to talk about it was a 16-11 win for Langley, and there's a couple of things that come to my mind of why. Did Peterborough take them too lightly? Did Peterborough not realize how fast a team these guys are? Is Peterborough older and a little bit slower that they can't keep up with the Thunder? Just putting that out there. Shawn, what do you think?
I don't know. I looked at these past two games really, and the question mark is, can Peterborough shut down Dixon and Dobie? Those are the guys who are really killing them. I don't know what is about it. I mean, game one, Peterborough had 61 shots. I know there's question marks about Langley's defense coming in, whether they could kind of hold up, a little bit more inexperienced compared to Peterborough's offense. I don't know whether it's Peterborough's taking them lightly or just Langley's kind of brought their lunch pail to this series, and they're going to work for it.
Right. One of the things I'm thinking, and I think I brought it up there, was the speed thing. I think it took them off guard a little bit. I just don't think that they were ready off the hop, because first shift, 1-0. Doug Buckham faced 12 shots, let in 6 goals. And then he was replaced with Matt Mintz, who more or less righted the ship for the time being. But there's only so much. You can only hold the floodgates back for so far. Doug Buckham's a pretty even-keeled guy. He doesn't get rattled. He doesn't really get you don't really see emotion all over him. He's not a Matt Royk kind of guy, or a Frank Scigliano kind of guy, where he wears it on his sleeve. But he was obviously rocked by what he was facing, and those goals, maybe one or maybe two, could have been saved. But man, these were good shots by good shooters. So really, what could he do, Mike? What do you think?
Yeah, it's if you're Peterborough, you've been pretty much riding Doug Buchan, throughout the MSL playoffs. I didn't see any reason, not to go with him to start the series. I have to think it's just a blip. There's still plenty of series left. We certainly know what they're capable of.
Well, yeah.
They definitely showed it against a Six Nations squad that, a lot of people probably figured was going to run them over
Right.
in the
There's a
MSL
big factor,
finals
though, in
with the
that
way they
first game,
played
too.
this year.
There's a big
So,
factor.
yeah, as far as not being ready for the speed, I can't really attest to that.
Right.
I would say what I could attest to is Langley's defense, which, to me, or, to Shawn and I both, I think was the big question mark, was whether
Right.
they could kind of hold their own against against the Peterborough offense, because they're, for for lack of a better way to put it, there are some guys who aren't established names on that defense.
Right.
I mean, there's a few guys, Reese Callies, Jordan Magnuson, who, lacrosse fans are going to be familiar with because they play or did play. But then you got other guys, some of those guys just got drafted,
Yeah.
over the
True.
weekend.
Very
Trump
true.
Kellner, Isaac Nagoyu. So, certainly that was kind of the bigger question mark as far as could they stand up. And I mean, so far through 2 games, they've been able to withstand. And I know you're going to get to game 2, but they definitely, I was able to catch about the second half or so of game 2,
Right.
and they, including overtime, and they were definitely able to, they were definitely holding their own.
Sure. We're worried about Scigliano. We talked about that before, but he faced 61 shots in the first game and let in 11. So he made 50 saves in that first game. He's on his game. If there's ever a time he's locked in, he's locked in. And we'll talk about game 2 and all the shots he faced, which was almost double this, it seems. That was over with, which is even crazier. But I do want to bring up Peterborough were missing not just 2 people. They were missing 2 main factors. Thomas Hogarth was out with an ear infection, and Joe Resetaritz was out with the flu. Hogarth was able to play the game 2, but Resetaritz is still out. That's a big piece, or big pieces, to be missing from your offense.
Yes, but I guess when you look at the entirety of the Peterborough offense, you don't. We always want to say one guy doesn't make a team. Of course, I could sound like I'm contradicting myself because I spent weeks on end campaigning for Joe Resetaritz for NLL MVP. For that
that's
very
when he was
reason.
Forget about him.
He carried that team. But I mean,
that Philadelphia wing, though, I'm telling you,
it's obviously this is a slightly different situation. It's hard to say, one person, needs to carry the team when you have the guy, when you have guys like Matthews and Hogarth and Vidarelli.
Hogarth was out in game 1 also, remember. So
True.
Hogarth and Resetaritz were out. So it's not just one, but it's also guys that are drawing defense away from where they're doing their jobs, which opens up Catoni's and stuff like that. Because Catoni didn't get anything last night, right? He didn't have a point last night. Tate did, but Holden didn't. And basically, the way I've seen that offense is that team goes as Catoni goes. Yes, you have Hogarth. Yes, you have Resetaritz, but the games that Catoni's not scoring, they're not winning. Last night was another prime example of that. He didn't
I'm just curious.
It might be coincidence. I don't think so. I think an awful lot runs through his shot, and having his shot at the top of the circle is a laser, and more times than not, it seems to find its way into a corner. So it's just putting different ideas out there. Go ahead, Shawn.
I was just curious, Gary, because in game 1, I mean, Austin Hazen had a couple of goals there for Peterborough. Maybe do they have to start leaning on those younger guys now?
I think so. Because I think that's the future. I don't think that we're going to discuss some of that stuff later on with the draft, and Mike has some valid points. The way the league is going to be going, and at least it looks that way, and we have so many really qualified junior A, junior B guys, even junior C guys that probably should be junior A or junior B by now, that I think you're going to see that age is going to slowly come down. It's going to come down in the NLL for sure, especially when they're being paid more and more as they go along. But as the NLL goes, so is the WA and MSL. So you might see a couple of guys hang on, but I think that as the years go on, not in the too distant future, that those age numbers, not limits, but age numbers are going to start dropping slowly, but going to start dropping. You're not going to see the 35, 40-year-olds who want to spend time with their families anyways. But you're going to start seeing that those roster spots are taken up by the 21 and 22-year-olds because our developmental is so good now that these guys are ready to step in, as proven this past summer. Now I bring up Austin Hazen. Does anybody ever remember in any of the Man Cups a rookie stepping in his very first game and scoring a hat trick? Anybody?
No.
Let alone in the first period alone. He had a hat trick in the first period. How's that for stepping and putting your footprint in the day before the draft?
True.
Yeah.
True. That
So-
kind of harkens to what we discussed last week or a couple weeks ago with some of the names that came out of the minors club for the Minto Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yep.
we saw a couple of those guys get drafted this weekend.
Yeah, and we'll come to that
Elevated their stock
Yeah.
significantly.
We talked
So-
about that last week. That was the Nathan Grennan thing from last year on Brampton. He elevated his stock enough to go 5th overall to Panther City and actually had a very good year with Panther City. And we're going to see that again with Matthew Gauthier and a few others because nobody knew who he was up until the Minto Cup, honestly. And then, not only did he make a statement, but he got drafted first round. And we're going to come to a lot of the other questions that I have about the West and were they neglected again? Because if you look at that first round draft, again, it's so heavily Ontario'd that, there were 4 or 5 guys, but there's 23 picks. So, but I want to get into game 2 of the Man Cup before we go completely off the rails here. We'll get to all that in our second half. Stay tuned. But the second game, if we thought the first game was nutty, the second game was absolutely insane. I was supposed to be there, but I was at the draft, and I couldn't get to Peterborough in time to get in there. But, you had almost 4,000 people there, so it was a frenzy. You had Langley, who just was high off their first win. Peterborough, who was foaming at the teeth, foaming at the mouth to get back at it. And what did you have? First period tied 4-4. Second period tied 6-6. Third period tied 11-11. You go into the overtime, and you are, 14-14 after the first 10 minutes? Now we're going into another overtime. Well, how much more exciting and have you used your seat at all in this game? And if you have you used more than just the edge of it? I doubt it. But it became, as you guys mentioned, the Curtis Dixon and Dane Dobby show on the Langley Thunder. And as long as they're able to run wild, they're going to. Now I want to bring up a little bit of contra. I want to see if you guys are into the same as me. This conspiracy theory. Oh no. But, Dobby's goal in overtime was beautiful. And was he in the crease? No. Nope, that was a clean goal. But the goal with .0000000000001 left on the clock, from all things that I had seen, was late. And since we don't have review, if it's called a goal on the floor, it's a goal. But unless the referee had how in hell could he see the net, see the clock, and anything else? How is it possible? And then the horn goes off at the same time, and you can tell me you saw that within 100th of a second. Or a millionth of a second, depending on how you really want to look at it. I was
going to say, Gary, I've seen that happen a couple of times. I think it was actually in the WLA finals where there's a couple iffy goals, and because they didn't have instant replay like they have in the NLL, the call on the field stand.
Yeah. So do we need to look into that? Do the commissioners need to go and say, yes, we need to find a way to get some form of camera in here to have, now that they're being televised, WLA is already being televised. But now that the MSLs actually come into the 19th century and are getting televised, is there really no excuse that there should be instant replay or a video replay of something like this? Maybe not to have challenges like in the NLL, but maybe on something that is game changing, because that's a game changer. If that goal doesn't count, it's over. Peterborough comes out, it's 1-1. We're talking about game 3 on Monday.
Let's say with this
being a tie.
We could look at it this way, Gary. Like if we're in that sudden death overtime and it goes, crossbar down and it goes where the lineman bounces out, it's called no goal.
We had that already too, right? We had a goal like that too. We had a goal crossbar down, and damned if I thought it was in, but again, it was called no goal. So there was all kinds of little things that were in play here, and then of course, let's add to the drama. It looks like Langley's going to win in overtime, and with 4 seconds left, Peterborough winds up putting one in, and we wind up going to sudden death. And here I am thinking, okay, they have the momentum now. They just, Langley should be holding their head for a minute or two, take advantage. But Peterborough can't get out of their own way. All season long, they've had trouble with special teams. And if you listen to the other show and you listen to Shooter Davis, he made mention of that. As long as they stay, without that, playing 5-on-5, they're fine. If they get into penalty trouble, they're dead. Well, even when they were getting a penalty called on somebody else, excuse me, you have Shawn Evans embellishing, and he's getting an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Now, maybe it's time to just play the game. Stop trying to draw penalties and stop it. Just do what you got to do, because it's not working. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah,
that's kind of Shawn Evans' game too, isn't it? Kind of just kind of getting the skin of the guys. But I looked at you're talking about kind of going into that overtime period. You look at it. Robert Church's goal with 1:17 left was with the extra attacker. Dane Doby's in the last second there in the third, again with the extra attacker. Peterborough obviously has issues playing a man down, whether it's the extra attacker or on the power play. So they've got to watch their P's and Q's, especially guys like Shawn Evans who should know better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. We are starting to see, at least I feel like I'm starting to see in the last couple of seasons, that there are some players that are kind of trying to do their best to more draw a penalty than to actually, work to either beat their man or, get a shot off, score. I certainly hope that these leagues don't, players don't keep going down that road. But, on the other hand, how often do you commend a player for what you would view as, a high IQ play, and getting their team into a man advantage situation.
Yeah.
And we always say, guys like Shawn Evans, guys like, I would consider Chase Fraser another one, Jordan Durston, guy that kind of just gets under your skin and, will rub people, rub the opponent the wrong way and, cause them to try to take a shot and, get a penalty called on them.
Mm-hmm.
You always love when those guys are on your team and you can't stand them when they're on the opposing team.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully it doesn't, that trend doesn't continue to escalate into, the kind of stuff we see with all the flopping and the NBA and,
yeah, because that's ridiculous and it cheapens.
Yeah, NFL with pass interference penalties, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know what the answer is to try to keep that under control.
Well, I like what they're doing actually with that. If you're going to try and draw it, you get an unsportsmanlike penalty.
Yeah,
you can draw it, but you're going to go with them.
Yeah, okay. No, I agree. Call it. That's the only way you're going to stop
like that, and it stops your team from moving forward. I think that that should stop that right there.
Yeah,
sure.
And if not, I believe that the coach should be talking to him, going, "You're not helping." Sometimes maybe if you can do it to a Curtis Dixon or a Dane Dobby, maybe. But if you're just taking, one of the guys off for no apparent reason, and you're going off as a Shawn Evans per se, who is a viable offensive, weapon. When he plays great.
Yeah,
it's keeping him focused. It seems.
Yeah.
So
it's a little bit of a feeling out process, right? Especially for players like Shawn, where what's the referees going? What are they calling? Can I get away with this, or are they going to start calling my diving?
We get a ref crew like last night where nothing seems to be consistent.
Yeah.
Then we got a problem. So let's hope that by game 3 tomorrow night, things have gotten ironed out. I have a feeling that Peterborough is going to come roaring. Probably you will see Joe Rusteris in the lineup. I don't think the flu lasts longer than a couple of days for him. It's not COVID, so he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to go and sit in a room by himself. So thank goodness we're past that. All right. So again, tomorrow night is game 3 in Peterborough. You can catch that on YouTube either on the Man Cup channel, Man Cup 2022, or you can type in Major Series Lacrosse and it's on their page. Any way you look at it, it is free for the viewing. Watch it. You are not going to be disappointed with what you're watching. This is some amazing lacrosse with 2 of the best teams that Canada has to offer. Period. So, all right, let's go to the PLL. We had their semifinals today, and we had 2 upsets. Pretty amazing. Who of the 3 of us picked that?
Okay, Gary.
Let me break my arm trying to pat myself on the. Made a bit of money on that on Bet 365. Thank you very much. But just a bit. I'm still going to be working tomorrow. But yeah, we had 2 really great games. Mike, you want to start us off with your first game?
Yeah. So Water Dogs came in to face the top seed Whip Snakes, and for the second time this season, the Whip Snakes suffered a loss. Not ironically, the very first one during the regular season was also the Water Dogs, and it was also by the same score, 11-10. The big takeaways I got from this game were, Michael Sowers notching a hat trick, Kieran McArdle a fourth quarter hat trick.
That's
incredible. Pretty much sealed the game. He'd been quiet for 36 minutes prior to that, more or less, and really stepped up. And part of that could have been a couple of the injuries that the Water Dogs suffered. Sowers played most of the game, I believe, with the strained hamstring, so his mobility was somewhat limited later in the game. But at the same time, he also was still drawing Whip Snake's best defender most of the time. So, to be able to continue to move well enough that the top team in the league is putting their best defender on you for most of the game, and you were able to find lanes and facilitate and get the ball to other players who were able to put it in the back of the net was pretty commendable.
I think a big thing also is Dylan Ward. He stood on his head, man. He made 17 saves. He was crazy in that.
Yeah. His play was definitely, and you have to figure next week there will be a little bit of a revenge factor, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of funny?
But Water Dogs also lost Mikey Schlosser partway through the game to a lower body injury. I don't have any word. I don't know if you guys have heard anything yet, whether he'll be available for next week or not. But and they had a couple other guys go down. Stephen DiNapoli went down later in the game with some sort of injury, and he was on the ground for like a good minute before they whistled the play dead.
Right.
But kudos to Ward for standing on his head, and
yeah, definitely.
For me, I mean, as good as the Whip Snakes were, I think it's nice to see, a little bit of, a little
Something
bit
different.
of, yeah, a little something different rather than seeing them, make the fourth straight championship game.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing I will say I'm a little baffled by, really two. Zed Williams was,
Hmm.
almost invisible. I think he had one goal,
Two.
and
Two according to
he
stats.
did that too. Okay.
Yeah.
But he just didn't seem to be much of a factor during the game, and then the pretty much the last possession of the game with the Whip Snakes, uh,
Hmm.
somehow the ball never ended up in Matt Rainbow's stick, and that to me that's inexcusable.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a former league MVP, and pretty much the heart and soul of your team, down one with 25 seconds to go, and somehow he never gets the ball in his stick,
Right. I
to,
also
to equalize.
we talked so much about Jake Withers and being the guy, and he has this big name, especially from all his years of NLL and MSL and that. But here's Joey Nadella, basically took him to school. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
13
13
to
to
11 isn't
24.
that much of a class.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
still, we keep putting Jake Withers on this pedestal of, oh my God, Withers will be playing, so oh my God, they're going to have 90% of the 13 to 11 for Nardella. First of all, yes, Jake Withers is really great at what he does, but now with all these Fogos here, like the Nardellas, like the Baptistes, like even I can add Max Adler into that equation now. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of a top echelon of face-off guys. He's not the guy. It's not, years ago where you had a couple of guys who knew how to do face-offs and everybody else kind of sat there and tried. Nardella is the real deal, and he's a powerhouse. And he can do a lot more than just win a face-off for you. So I think that's a huge thing as well.
Yeah. No, you make a great point, Gary, especially in a tight game like that, even if it's just 2 extra face-offs, those could be all the difference in the world, right?
Yeah. No, I was thinking about the Snyder brothers back in the day when they would just rampage through, right? But to try and keep the one Snyder sane and keep him out of the box was a whole other animal, right? When he was focused, he'd win 90% of the face-offs and probably get you 3 goals from face-offs. But then he would get into a brawl and put you down for 11 minutes, and so it was the good with the bad. Yeah. Ironically, it's a Jekyll and Hyde thing, because if you met him outside the field, really great guy, soft-spoken, nice guy. Put on a uniform, put him on the turf, and forget it. Who are you? And that's it. But we had the second game, and once again, talking about peaking at the right time, eh? Chaos beats the Archers. Now, we had talked. I'm guilty of it. How good the Archers were playing down the stretch, and boy, oh boy, I don't think anybody want to face them. I think it was the other way around. The way that the Chaos team won last week, 12-3 or something like that, and just disposed of it. Talking about peaking at the right time and sending a message enough that in this game, I think that the Archers were walking on glass. I just don't think that they were themselves playing. Now, of course, I talked briefly about it with Max Adler. They've had trouble all year long with faceoffs, right? Justin Asio has done his best, but again, 13-7 for Max Adler over him. So possession-wise, off the draws are going to Chaos. And now you got the guys who are rested, right? Now you got the Josh Burns, you got the Dane Smiths, you have Chris Kluche. They're rested. They're the finals over months ago. They've got it out of their system. They're focused. Blaze Reardon and net. I don't think I've seen them play better than the last 2 games. Just at the right time, peaking. Well, I don't think that the Archers were really, really there. And I think that the unsung thing of Chaos is how good their defense can be. And, well, it proved it here. Because, 3 of those 7 goals came in the fourth when it was already, it's garbage time. So really, you're talking about 4 goals. 3 last week, 4 this week. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could almost make a comparison to what we're seeing out of Langley in the Man Cup with Chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a dead on. It's an excellent comparison. And again, well, the only difference is that Chaos is coming off a championship, right? So they have been there. And Blaze Reardon said it in his interview. A lot of this has to do with these guys know what to expect in these 48 minutes and what it takes. And it's true. Because if it wasn't this, also the NLL, and these guys are champions. And yeah, their pride got hurt losing to Colorado in the NLL. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they're chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
add Rogers and a thing like that to it. You're well, go ahead,
you make a good point though, Gary, about the Archers. I mean, heading into that, which Chaos team was going to show up? The 2-8 Archers, or the Archers that took them to the watershed in the first round there, the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's the one team I would not want to play because you don't know who's going to show up.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you know what we got was Chaos down to business. And I don't know. I just have a feeling, I'd love to see Water Dogs. Honestly, I would like to see somebody different win it. I just have a feeling that Chaos is primed and ready to hoist the cup again. Everything is in alignment. Everything is moving upward. Everything is working together. It's a team that, we've talked about it, an ending. That, it's a team that lives together, plays together, goes to different events together. They play winter together. They play summer together. They know each other. Yeah. And then you have a goalie like Blaze Reardon, who, when he's on, is unbeatable. Well,
yeah. I mean, I'd be shocked if the odds makers, had Chaos as the underdog in the championship game. I don't see how they're not favored.
It's just funny, man.
Especially considering just the injuries to the Water Dogs. We don't know the status of Sowers. We don't know whether Schlosser's going to be able to play. Honestly, we don't know DiNapoli's condition either. Right. So, and Dylan Ward took some bumps. There were a couple of crease dives where he, and plays where he got tangled up inside and outside the crease with Chaos players. So,
but that's kind of funny too, man. A team that only had a couple of wins during the year is going to be the favorite for the cup.
They barely made it into the playoffs. They had to wait.
Yeah. Last week of the season, they got in there.
Yeah,
and it took a loss from Cannons to do it. It's weird,
But by the same token, I mean, I think this is a chance for some guys, Kieran McArdle. I mean, look at the season he's having. I mean, this is his chance to cap it off.
Oh, yeah, he's a game changer
championship and to step up. I mean, we saw him step up in the fourth quarter.
That's it exactly.
To step up and take control of the game.
He's gone from being a secondary player to he is the game.
Yeah.
He is a game changer now. Yeah. And if he can live up to that hype and keep that, that's the key. Because it's one thing to, it's climbing a mountain and getting there, staying there and being that superstar. That's why these guys are superstars.
Yeah, and I would say, if we can see that same kind of performance from McArdle throughout the game, that's going to rub off on guys like Connor Kelly. It doesn't need to rub off on Zach Courier. We already know what he's capable of. Yeah. But he is some of these other guys, Jack Hanna, on the offense that will just
absolutely.
It's just going to send their confidence through the roof.
I just want to say thanks to Al. Al's the head guy of Edge of Philly Sports. I appreciate that for all the work I did at the draft. Thank you very much. But guys, let's move ourselves along a little bit. And it is my favorite time of the week. Are you ready? It is Inside the Box with John Craig. John, how are you?
Hey, just reading about cats.
Yeah, you know that Netflix movie, right? Don't mess with cats.
I realized I wasn't drafted again this year, so I'm a little
upset. I listened for your name, though.
Yeah,
I listened for your name.
I did too. It wasn't even close.
I think there was a John at one point, and there was a Craig at another point, but I don't think that they ever got together.
Multiple personalities. Yeah, that could have been me. I'm
Hey, listen. If there had been a 7th round, I'm just saying.
It would still be going on now.
No, see, I wanted to go in the 69th round.
All right, John, what do you got for us this week?
Well, I was thinking the other day, a lot of things you guys don't hear about. Everybody knows what goes on the floor pretty much, but what goes on behind the scenes? How do we get stuck with our roommates? That's a pretty interesting thing because roommates are really important when you're traveling as a team, not only for the players, but for staff and so on and so forth. And normally players get put with players and staff get put with staff. But what happens when things go kind of wrong is where I'm going to go with this a little bit. It's just like when I did the World Games in 2003. Did I get stuck with the trainer? No, I got the backup goalie. And why that was all wrong is because he told the goalies upstairs from Australia, go wake up my equipment manager at 6 a.m. He'll do your equipment. So you never know what you're going to get. But it's a part of that bonding again. So I think it was when I first took over in 2003 that I really realized how important roommate choice was. Now you got guys like Billy D and Mark, the brother-in-laws. They were related somewhat. They always roomed with one another, and when one got in trouble, the other one was always in trouble. So if you bailed one out, you bailed two out. So it was always a 2-for-1 special, I guess. And then you got guys like Chugger and Patty McCready. Now, originally, when Chugger played for Rochester, his roommate was Chris Driscoll. And, they became really good friends through it. But Chugger's got some oddities when he's a roommate. One being that after the game, you got to order a wheel. And for maybe Muffler Mike might not know what a wheel is, and you might. But that's pizza. And Chug had to have it a certain way. If somebody said you want ham and pineapple on your pizza, I thought he was going to kill him. But Chugger also, it could be the middle, like ice cold outside, like in Boston. He'd be next to the window, wide open, and McCready would be freezing. And it's like you're married. And that was the other thing. That is my lacrosse wife. So him and Patty would go and Patty would walk up. I wish you closed the window. You know better. And it was like listening to women half the time. But you see the camaraderie because they were responsible for one another, on and off the floor. They were an odd couple, so to speak. But one of my favorites was when we didn't have an assistant manager that could travel. So Kurt Silcott was still our GM, and our backup goalie, and you should remember this one, Gary, his name was, I'm so used to call him Chico General.
Mm-hmm.
Derek General, Chico General, or as I called him later on in life, Chico Dollar General. So Chico and I did not get along. He was Chugger's backup. We did not get along. So the first time we went away, Kurt put me with Brian Kazarian, and the players aren't used to being with staff, so that was kind of odd for Brian and I. We made it work. Well, we get to Philly, and I figured Kurt's going to give me Brian back, and I don't know. He got this evil look in his eye. I said, well, am I with Brian? And he goes, no, you're with Chico. And I think I let go about 4 F-bombs at that point. So he walks in the little restaurant to hand Chico his key, and Chico goes, who am I with? And he goes, you're with Johnny Craig. And I heard about 4 F-bombs out of him. Well, we get in the room. You're on that side. You don't touch this. I mean, it's like 2 bickering old men. Come several, games, and Chico, I didn't know somebody told him. I was going through some medical stuff at the time with migraines and sugar dropped. Well, one of my friends let him know this. Then in Calgary, he became my mother. It's like he'd be waking me up at 7 in the morning. Okay, you got to eat. You know you have to eat. It was like having a mother. You know, now we got to go take this walk. Now you got to go exercise. Now you got. So it's funny, what people don't see is the camaraderie built behind the scenes. You know, pretty short of people trying on each other's underwear, and that's a JT thing. So I'm not even going to go into that. But you know, everybody thinks that, you know, players, there's not a lot of development to the whole situation, where you're spending all that time in training camp, and then you get down to your final group, and then you've got to travel, and you've got that group, and that group's got to be cohesive, because if you've got people infighting, that team's it's not going to be able to pull together on the floor. And it's pretty interesting just to see. I mean, I just talked to Chico this morning, and I said, I'm going to be talking about you tonight. He goes, oh, you're trying to make me tune in. I said, you should tune in every week. I said, it's a good show. Come on, get off your butt. So I don't know if he's listening or not. If I get nasty comments on my Facebook, then I know he did. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times we joke around with stuff, but it's kind of an interesting thing. And remember, college, if you guys went to college, or if you played with a team, or even if you run in a house with somebody, being with the right roommate makes a lot of difference. If you're with the wrong roommate,
it could be a hell.
And I just thought of my college roommate that would leave condoms laying all over the room, used. Yeah. So you always want to be with the right roommate. And the girls he would bring home for me, Gary, you look a lot cuter than them. So, you know.
Oh, boy.
I knew Shawn, you were like, should I laugh? Mike, I knew you would laugh. So.
This could be wrong.
I guess it's the two American guys against the two Canadian guys in this one. Yeah, no, honestly, there's a lot of goes into it. And I've heard this from a lot of players that play college. And Chris Panos, I don't know if you remember Chris playing in the NLL. Mm-hmm. You know, he gets his players because he knows how it is. And I think that's why he's had success as a coach, because he molds them. And a lot of times we don't see that as fans and, you know, just people reporting on it. There's so much that goes into it. Even the referees system, I think they pair them at one time they used to in groups so they could tolerate each other. And then they pick somebody each night who to blame when they made bad calls. Which was every night, so somebody was to blame. But that's all I got for you this week, guys.
John,
trying to keep it PG this week.
Always amusing, always informative. Absolutely.
And you see what? You missed it.
No, never mind. We'll go back to it. What's that?
What is it?
That's a Phoenix shirt. That's a Coyote.
Yeah, it's a Phoenix. I was looking for my Sting shirt, but all I had was a Coyote shirt today.
There you go.
All right, gentlemen.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, John.
Thanks, John.
That's John Craig from Inside the Box. Every single week, John will be here with us, giving us amusing anecdotes, and also informative for that matter. Every week, man. Every week. He doesn't fail to get me every single week. He likes to bring up Chris White, and I actually have a Chris White Toronto Rock jersey. I don't have a Buffalo Bandits jersey, but I have to remember to get that out here for one of these upcoming weeks. All right, guys. The big one. The National Lacrosse League, and they had their draft. Where do we start? Like I say, we start with number one, Thomas McConvey. But you know, the funny thing is that of the first, I don't know how many picks they're not going to be playing. They're going back to school. So they kind of had to do a little bit of sliding and moving and get that jersey off of them and get that back over there. And, you know, you keep the cap, but, you know, McConvey, obviously, being the number one pick, his name was on the jersey. So, because they knew that one was coming. Other than that, though. But my question to you, Shawn, is did the West get overlooked again?
Personally, yeah, I think so. I was just looking in the first round, and there was, 4 picks from the West out of
4 or 5 is what I got, yeah.
Out of 23?
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me that's all that's coming out of the West? And again, like you're mentioning, someone like Matthew Gauthier from the Miners, do you think he would have gone 9th if he didn't have the Minto Cup that he had?
2 weeks ago, he would have been in the 3rd round, maybe 4th.
You would have even heard of him
Mhm.
Yeah, like there's a lot of talent out west here, and I don't know, is it a bias that's going on or what? But
No,
even BC, I mean,
I think I have the answer for you on that one. And it says it's not anything that is a snub. We just don't get any games from there. Number one, the games are later. So, to watch a WLA game is a chore for someone like me who's going to work at 2 a.m, because the game's going to go till 1 a.m. So if I don't want to sleep, I can go and catch the game. For me to go and catch a box score the next day, there's only so many box scores I'm going to read. So I'm not going to read all the junior ones, and I'm definitely not going to read the ones from out west when I got to catch up on all the stuff here in Ontario. So yeah, it's not a snub per se. It is just there is so much information, and it's not delivered in a timely fashion that we can get it here.
well, I might just counter that with a couple points though, Gary. First, how do you solve that? Because with the time change, there's really no way to solve that without having, or maybe earlier games.
I think I have that a game of the week. A game of the week, Junior, because Mark Grimes is talking about doing that with OJLL. But why can't we have a national game of the week for Junior?
Yeah,
I don't think it would take that much effort to do it.
My other question is, do these teams not have West scouts to be at those games?
That's the point I was going to bring up. Was going to say.
Well, I know that Toronto for the longest time had Dave Pym working out west, and of course he's brought Reed Reinhold and a few other guys up here. Zach Mann's another one, but of course Dave has moved on and been different organization now. But yeah, there's scouts, but I don't know of a lot of them. Honestly, I don't.
And maybe that's it. Is they're maybe not putting the resources in? Like, again, I go back to the minors and the Minto Cup they had. Maybe it's time that they put more teams. Teams put more resources into scouting Western teams, because the talent is there.
Yeah, definitely, it's there.
It's been proven. It's been proven. Just looking at this year with the Minto Cup.
Can we lay this on the CLA again as dropping the ball? Or a ball that's continually
CLA, or is it the NLL teams? I feel it's a little column A and a little column B, right? Yeah, like you mentioned, games of the week, stuff like that with the CLA, but also comes down to the organizations and the NLL putting the resources in as well. Yeah,
it's also to invite the scouts out there, get them out there, get their players shown, get their players seen. But for them to be on our lips, we have to see it too. So there has to be a better way to broadcast these games. YouTube is a great tool.
That's a great point, Gary.
How am I going to find it?
And that's a great point, Gary, because if you put it on YouTube, like say you can't watch it the night that it happens, we can watch it the next morning.
Right.
It's easily accessible.
True, and I would add that, right now the expansion, maybe the first wave of expansion, if you will, for the NLL might be done for maybe a couple of years. I'm not sure what the plan is, as far as, with the new commissioner and everything. But obviously the expansion has primarily been on the Western side. So in the next few years, if we start seeing more Western teams, could that just kind of organically solve the problem?
Right.
That's a good point.
We got a comment from Joyce Suka. Grandma Rush. Good job, guys. Thanks, Joyce. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, it's good to hear from Joyce.
Oh man, this made my evening. Thank you so much, Joyce. Love Joyce. Sorry, to get back to our point. I think it's not just Alberta that's being ignored. The WLA and the junior AA, they're big organizations, man. They should be forefront, and they should have people that know how to get the names out, but they're not.
Yeah,
there's just not that many, and there's lots of kids. There's lots of programs. You know it, I know it. Because
I think Mike
would fall on its sword, right?
I think Mike makes a good point, especially just talking from experience with the RML in Alberta and Saskatchewan here, is when they only have 4 teams in the league, it's tough to gauge.
Yeah.
And so maybe it is that expansion that they need to bring in more talent into this league to find out where this kid sits and where he's ready.
Right. Okay, I want to bring up something that Mike brought up, but a little more of a synopsis. It'd probably make it a little bit less intricate, shall we say. What do the teams still need? Now, they've gone through free agency. They've gone through an entry draft. What do the teams, first of all, probably which teams need the most help? And then what do they need?
Ooh,
Well, obviously comes to mind Albany,
Yeah.
Calgary. Those come to my mind first and foremost. Because, ironically, one from either division. Albany's in trouble because you look at what the East has got. Buffalo's set. Toronto's pretty set. Rochester has certainly moved forward with what they've done.
improved. Yeah.
Absolutely. Philadelphia has made huge strides in what they did. I do want to bring up one other thing. Is that a friend of mine? His name is Deacon, and he's a Canadian junior goalie, Peterborough. And I met him a little ways back in the games that I've been going back and forth. And he was supposed to be on the show last Thursday, but couldn't make it. And here's why. He was supposed to be in the NLL draft, but Paul Day had gotten a hold of him saying, your name's nowhere on the list, bud. So he spent his day Thursday, because he had all this stuff in there, figuring out why and how to fix that. And he did. And just after I had finished with my interview with the commissioner, I came back in through the middle of the second round, and lo and behold, there was Philadelphia drafting Deacon Nutt. Now, they've got a world-class goalie who is young and up and coming. And I'm looking forward. He's going to be on my other show on the 22nd. This week is Holden Catoni, so we'll be talking Mann Cup. But the following week, we have a lot to talk about all of a sudden. Not just his exploits in Canadian championships and Junior A Peterborough, and being on the bench as a backup to Mike Poulin during the year, or Doug Buckham, but also the whole process and the mindset of how to get ready for this NLL draft to stay on with the club. So it's pretty exciting. I'm really happy for him too. Sorry to get us away from what we were talking about. But Albany, what do you think, Mike? What do they need to do pronto?
That's a good question. I'd like to say that they need to focus on the offense, but
Anybody in particular, John?
But getting back to Albany, I mean, yeah, obviously, there's a significant overhaul on the defense. For me, the question is, how about some of the guys that they have rights to who haven't played box yet? Can they get those guys in? We've already seen that they've gotten, a number of PLL Water Dogs players. They now have Charlie Kitchen. They have Michael Sowers, who hasn't played, but certainly could come in on the left-hand side this season. They acquired Connor Kelly, who has some NLL experience.
Yeah.
They now have Kieran McArdle,
which
also
is
on the left-hand
big
side.
move too, because he's a damn good box player too.
They're going to need him.
Yeah, and if he can build on that season, on the season he's having, look out.
You gotta reintroduce him to his nickname he had in Toronto, the Sheriff.
Definitely. And they also, they have Charlie Kitchen, who's also a Water Dog, and they have Ryan Conrad, who hasn't suited up for an NLL game yet. So, right. There's a number of guys, and they also, the last person they have is Ethan Walker. They traded Andrew Q to Georgia. They got Ethan Walker in return. So now their left side, you've got McArdle You've got Ethan Walker. I believe Jordan Durston's under contract, but you could have Sowers coming in. And
So
then
you
on
tell
the
me
right
there's a
side,
trade in the works somewhere coming up.
I don't know if there's a trade in the works. They could certainly be banking on, the possibility that all these guys come in and they just kind of bring in their chemistry from their time during the summer.
You're going to have to get some righties out there.
Pretty much in the mold of Buffalo. They have all these players who also play for Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fair amount of chemistry there.
Also, ready-made rivalries.
Yeah. So there's certain, I don't rule out the possibility that they can kind of come in, and maybe it takes a year. What I would note is on the back end, I don't think they've suffered as far as losing guys in free agency or anything. I know they put Adrian Soroketti on the holdout list. I don't know if that means he's looking for a trade elsewhere, or if he's just deciding not to play, or if it's just, maybe they put him on that list instead of an injury list, to maybe hide the fact that he's injured. I don't know any of that information other than he's on that list now. Most of their other guys on the defense have not departed. They've already traded with Las Vegas to get Jackson Nishimura back. They traded Jacob Rouet away. So there was another part of the offensive mass exodus. Right. And they have some younger talent in, they selected, they acquired Tanner Thompson, a couple of years ago from Sask. It was a guy they kind of wanted near the end of the first round when he was drafted, but Sask got him first.
Right.
Same deal with Aaron Forster, who they just acquired. And Forster was another guy they were looking to select, but couldn't. He got basically taken before kind of their next pick came. So he and Thompson are kind of in the same position with as far as Albany had their eyes on him a couple of years ago.
He's a really good player. Like I say, I watched him in Toronto as he was making his way up to the main roster. Really good player.
And for me, I viewed Forster as basically Nishimura's replacement. Now they have Forster and Nishimura.
Yeah.
So, that add that to Colton Watkinson and Tony Malcolm and John LaFontaine. There's a lot of speed on that defense and that transition now.
Yeah, that's going to be big because I think that's how they're going to have to go. Michael Sowers can flat out play box. He played in Philly, MVP of 2 championship games, 6 goals, 3 assists in each. If you can play, you can play. I agree. I think that's a really fair statement.
And hopefully he decides to play. And the other X factor, another guy who I would say could maybe come in off PLL and play, Grant Ament. Yeah, they have his rights too.
Yeah. So it's not as bleak as we like.
I think if you put together their offensive unit now, and now you look at, instead of looking at the departures, look at what's coming in. And now on the left side, you could have McArdle, Sowers, Durston, Ethan Walker. On the right side, you could have Kitchen, Connor Kelly, Tanner Thompson, and maybe Grant Ament.
That's a pretty strong lineup.
And now it's not looking so bleak. I'm not entirely, I don't want to say I'm entirely sold on this rebuild. I still kind of feel like maybe it was a little bit unnecessary to have such an overhaul. And I understand that, the domino that kind of fell in this was the whole CBA allowing Joe Resiteritz to basically reject the franchise tag.
Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of started, honestly, it started the whole free agency, dominoes falling.
Yeah.
For the entire
we didn't think it was going to be a lot, turned out to be quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it was just he signed that deal, and it was just transaction after transaction, and guys just he came into Philly. Corey Small left for Toronto. Someone left Toronto, and it just dominoes
went on and on and on.
Went on from there. Yeah.
Just to get onto this comment quickly, as who takes the place of Mike Poulin. Well, that's the reason why Georgia made that deal a couple of years ago to get Craig Wendy back because he knew this day was coming. And he's going to be your number one. He was your number one in Rochester, and now I think this is a big move for Craig. I think this is his time to shine.
If I make a point there, Gary, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I make a point there, Gary, remember Georgia drafted Brett Dobson as well.
That's right, too.
So, and he's a highly touted generational goaltender. So I don't think they're going to have any issues in goal.
No, I don't think so either. But like I say, I know Craig very well. I've watched him, and I've been able to cover him since his days, through beginnings of the Arena Lacrosse League all the way up through Senior B. And then when he finally made the leap into NLL, he was on the Georgia roster, the practice squad. Originally, never really got into one game at the very end of the season back 4, 5, 6 years ago. But again, worked hard at the Arena Lacrosse League, became a standout goalie there, was a standout goalie for the Oakville Titans, and then he was a backup also for the Oakville Rock to Nick Rose, and playing a number of MSL games, getting himself going. If you're not going to find a guy who works harder than Craig, you're also not going to find a nicer guy than Craig. So I love watching stories like this where hard work pays off, and he will be the number one goalie. His work initiative, if you remember when Rochester first became that expansion team, Steve Deep Fryer was your number one goalie going into training camp, coming out of training camp, and he plain out took that job away from him, so much so that Rylan Hartley wound up being the number two goalie, and Steve Fryer wound up playing left press box until he finally hightailed it out, and I believe is still moving around journeyman now. So
yeah, I would add on top of that Georgia's in an interesting scenario. They almost seem to have improved the team almost primarily through free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Just making the trades, making the trade they made with Albany, getting Andrew Q. Obviously they lost Chad Tutton, but they have a number of guys who've been kind of waiting in the wings, or guys they drafted for future, like Ryan Lanchberry, who's going to be who was expected to play this year and beef up that right hand side very, very quietly retooling.
They got Brady Kiernan in the draft too, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
so that's a big one.
They had a good draft.
Great draft pick. We had an all in the family moment in the draft too, right? I was able to watch Mike Hazen draft Austin, who was drafted in the last draft, but through a technicality that was voided, so he had a chance to become Rochester Nighthawk. You'd say it's father's pride and father prejudice, but Austin's numbers stand out, man. When he was with the Excelsiors Junior, he was a leader. When he's been playing with Peterborough, well, you saw what he did in the Mann Cup in the first game. He had a hat trick. He was at the draft yesterday, and he still had a goal last night. So I'd say he's pretty resilient, and he's fast. He's got a great shot. So yeah, it's nice to see that you get your son, but you got a hell of a player there too. I watched Josh Dawick, Jamie Dawick's son, go to the Toronto Rock in the second round. I watched Jake Govett go to San Diego, Steve Govett's son. And then I watched Taggart Clark go to Philadelphia. Paul Day had to joke with me going, I'm the only one who had to draft somebody else's son. Glenn Clark of the Albany Firewolves, they just didn't have a pick for him. But I'm sure otherwise he'd have been there because he had a great summer too.
Yeah, and that's going to be I think a great pickup for Philly.
I think so as well.
Yeah.
We've talked so much about just a handful of these guys from the WLA and specifically from Nanaimo. Not to discount guys like Dylan Watson from Coquitlam, who got selected second and is going to be a key part of the Las Vegas Desert Dogs next year. But a bunch of these guys from Nanaimo really stood out. One of them did actually go to Albany in Will Johansson earlier in the first round.
That was a nice
So,
pickup.
and that's going to be another addition to
Yeah.
that defense that I talked about. And, the defense that really, had they been healthy all last year,
Right.
certainly would have been up, in the Buffalo, Toronto, Colorado type echelon. And I think they really still can this year, provided they remain healthy.
Yeah, no, Mike, I was just going to say,
got Coach, right? So I give it to Tracy Koleski and them because they got another fireballer there to go with Grennan, with Farrell, with Milligan. That's a pretty young, fast, and pretty equipped offense. I'll be curious to see who their offensive coach will be now that Dan T just stepped away, since he has other commitments with his real estate business taking off the way it is, and that's great for Dan. Very happy for him, but that leaves a hole in Koleski's unit.
no, I was going to say, Mike, you're really going to like Will Johansson. I think just from what I saw in the summer, not only is he a great defenseman, he's a guy who can push up the floor too. He's had a few nice goals. And just kind of looking at Tiger Clark's stats, I mean, regular season in 16 games, he had 46 points, and outstanding playoffs, 9 goals and 23 points. He's going to be ready to go. He's going to be a great pick for Philly.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, with Ben McIntosh and Joe Resiteritz, plenty of mentoring there to help him. So
yeah.
I think it's going to be kind of a pressure-free environment for him to be able to show what he can do and what he can bring to the Wings. So
right. Yep. That's true with what Mike's saying there. Zach Cole is another sleeper in the draft. Excellent player, and gets plenty of possessions. So So one more team that I want to deal with before we call it a night, and that's Calgary. They made a couple of decent picks, but I think they have a long way to go. So Seth Van Scheppen is an excellent pick. I've watched him, through Brampton, and he's the real deal. He deserves his first round pick, but has to be more.
Yeah. Well, I'll let
I was going to say, I just feel like the issues that Calgary have right now just can't be fixed in a draft. No. We always talked about, last year, Chris Dixon was kind of what, the straw that stirred the drink out there, and didn't really have any secondary from that. So who steps up? You have Jesse King. Sure. Yeah. He's probably gonna be the guy that steps up. But what do you have after that? You're probably looking at like a Tyler Pace or Zach Haywires, maybe a Dan Taylor. But those are guys who have to kind of pick up that pace. And they've really made no moves to really find that secondary scoring from what I've seen.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what alarms me most about Calgary is just it almost feels like there's just no sense of urgency. I mean, Tyler Burton, I can't remember, did he walk or did he get selected in expansion?
I think he walked.
Vegas.
I don't think he got selected.
I think he walked in free agency. Yeah. So I mean, they let him walk. Obviously, Dixon rejected the franchise tag, went to San Diego. They did sign Brett Hickey. So, on the right side, you're looking at him and you're looking at Pace, Hayden Dixon, Kyle Waters.
He's starting to get up there in age, though, too, right?
Yeah.
Injury prone and starting to get up there in age.
He is. But, it's.
Has he played a full season in the last 5 years?
He may not have.
I'm just asking.
And
I know Toronto had an injury problem. Philadelphia.
That will weaken my counterpoint, which was, how many 50-goal scorers in NLL history are there? Like
very
19
true.
19 or 20, and he's one of them.
Yep.
So,
and he really didn't gain his wings till he got to Toronto to get to the 50s, because Vancouver let him go for nothing because he really wasn't fitting in there. Which is awesome.
Exactly. So certainly this has the makings of a, hopefully
with the right offense,
renaissance. Yeah, that he can have a renaissance and a resurgence. but he's definitely gonna have young parts around him that are really gonna need to step up. But Hayden Dixon had a wonderful WLA campaign during the summer. We really saw Tyler Pace step up last NLL season, especially when Dixon was out.
Right.
And then the left side, I mean, King, Hairwires, Taylor. They do have Tanner Cook. He was kind of hot and cold last year. They do have Justin Inacio, who they drafted. He can kind of take over the face-offs from Tyler Burton.
Okay.
And that
after today, I'm not all that convinced, but okay.
Yeah. Well, I feel like serviceable goes a little farther in the NLL than it does the PLL.
Yeah, I guess so. Plus, there's a lot more going on out in the face.
So, yeah, and it also doesn't hurt that he's going to have the likes of Zach Courier to help get those possessions. Even when he's not winning the faceoffs.
We talked about Vegas. We talked about their goaltending, and they only had Landon Kells. They made it. They're the only ones to make a trade in the first round, and they got Joel Watson out of Rochester, which is probably a really good move because I don't think he's going to see much time in Rochester. So he might actually have a chance to, if not win a starting position, at least get some playing time in the NLL. And they got him for a song. They got him for a 2024 second round selection.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't they also draft Colin Jeffrey?
They did.
Out of Victoria.
Yeah.
So, we saw some of him, in Victoria and the WLA this year.
Yeah.
Step up in some big situations.
They did really well, actually. Shawn Williams. We talked before the draft, and they got Dylan Watson in the first round. They got it's eluding me, Jacob Saunders, also in the first round. So they did very well. They got good players. Look at the trades they've made in the last few weeks. Their offense is stacked right now. They're better than probably half of the other offenses that are out there. Now they're filling in the other pieces. I'm not totally convinced about their goaltending. I like Landon Kells. I've been watching him for a number of years, and I think he's going to be an excellent first-round goalie. But he needs to get acclimated, and I don't want him to get a rude awakening. An Alex Bouquet having a great WLA thing, and then boom, you come into the NLL and get lit up. Turnstile. That's fun. A red light Rastico.
Yeah, no, no, that's definitely a good point, and you have to imagine that's kind of driving how Shawn Williams is building defense. with guys like Turbo McIntosh.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of who else Tyson Rowe they took in the expansion draft.
That's right.
So there's a few guys who will be seasoned on that back end to help out the young goalies. So
right.
In essence, you could almost say it's not too far off from what we saw in New York year one, basically, where they had younger goaltending, and even last year, where you had younger goaltending, but you had a more veteran defensive unit.
But it's funny because I'm looking through this, and we talked about Rochester making all these moves beforehand, and how they got stronger, and they have Austin Hazen, yes, they have Parker Pfeiffer. He had a great summer, especially in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Everywhere I look, they get stronger, and all their picks are on point. There's none of these wasted things around there and then you don't see them again. And everything that they're doing here, they seem to be quite focused on where they're going, where they need to be. So I don't know if the Pagulas said, "Hey, we got to start winning because we need butts in the seats here," or what. But they certainly are on the right track from where they were a couple of years back.
The way I see that trade is it really was a win-win, wasn't it? Because Las Vegas gets Joel Watson, and maybe they give Kells a shot, but at least you have Watson who's back there, who's had a little bit of experience still to back him up if that's the case. And then, yeah, like you said, in response, Rochester gets that 18th pick and takes Hazen. It's a win-win, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. And of course, he's going to play for his dad.
Yeah.
But a first-round pick, regardless, he's going to be in that lineup. Something earth-shattering would have to happen for a first-round pick not to make their lineups. So, unless you're in Toronto, where you can get seven free agents, and well.
But you still only have half of a right-hand side on your offense.
It's true.
Now. So,
it's true.
Sure.
Though I will note, the Rock did draft Brendan Nicktorn. That would be interesting to add to their right-hand side.
That's going to be an interesting thing.
With Dan Dawson and with Tom Schreiber,
to
have a guy like Nicktorn, I think, certainly if he plays, I'm not familiar with how much box experience he has, but
I totally expect Challen Rogers to come out the front door, though. So that's going to bolster your offensive prowess off the right too, because there's enough young defensive things, and that defense got stronger too.
Adding Corbeil and
so they don't need to keep him there. So for him to come out the front, that's a hell of a move offensively, and
that would be something. And now that makes a guy like Nicktorn kind of your fourth guy, and takes the pressure off him.
Absolutely,
again,
that too.
So it gives him a chance to kind of flash some of his skills and kind of not have that pressure that.
Plus, you're not going to kill Rogers because you're trying to keep him on defense, trying to get him in transition. You're trying to keep him on the power play and the offense. Man, you all kill him.
Yeah.
You keep him in
one way. Yeah.
Position, have him concentrate on doing that. If something happens with an injury, you always can fall back on putting him out the back door. But there's enough guys there, and you're talking about the league's leading defense. So it's not like there needs to be a big rebuild there. They really didn't lose anybody, and they added strength. So they're able to do what they wanted to do a couple of years ago, and that's put Challen out the front door. So that solves a couple of issues, which also would be a reason why you would have Rob Hellier expendable.
Yep.
Granted, he has some opportunities of work out west, and Jamie is very, very accommodating. Brock Sorensen, he wanted to go out, and then, Jamie helped. Reed Reinhold had been talking about that for a while, of all the travel, living out in BC and coming in. And he bit the bullet. He did it for a couple more years for Jamie. But he had an opportunity to get him out there, and he did. So, as a player's owner, I don't think you're going to get any better than Jamie Dawick. First of all, just take a look at the facility and all the things that he's done for the teams there, let alone stability, let alone fighting for your guys. And if you do need to move and have something viable, he's happy to try and help, even if it's at a cost to him. But you take a look at the one thing that he got out of it is how many draft picks did he stock up on over the next few years for guys, because he doesn't need the player now. There's plenty of players in that system right now that putting another one there is just going to get somebody else cut. So by taking some draft picks as these guys are getting older, because Dawson, was he going to have another year, maybe 2, maybe 3? It's another Tom Brady. Eventually he's going to hang the thing up, right?
Yep.
Right. And that's sooner than later, or having that pick available if something bad happens. God forbid that, somebody gets an injury that's the end of that. But, as these guys are, Brad Cree, he's been with, it's hard to believe, he's been with the Rock 10 years now. And when we're looking at some of the pre-draft things, it was 2012 draft he came in here. Latrell Harris, he came in at 18. He's 23, 24 now. Very quietly, he's put in 5-6 years into the league, right?
Right.
And he's also twice the size as when he came in. He's a skinny kid when he came in. He's an animal now. You see him play? Holy smokes. He's like a freight train. So you put him inside the box, pardon, John, And, my God, he's your transition guy. You don't need to. You've lost. You lost Damon Edwards. You lost Domini. But do you have transition? Yes, you do. You got a number of other guys also. Jubenville can do it.
Brandon
You
Slaght.
talk, Gary, about racking up those draft picks. I mean, along with losing those, knowing that expansion was coming and could still be coming in the future, you're going to continue losing players to expansion drafts as well. So you just kind of reload with these drafts. I know Derek Keen's been doing that quite well in Saskatchewan. There's no one expansion is coming. Let's load up on draft picks.
Right. Absolutely. But, from what I gathered from the commissioner, we're not looking at expanding as rapidly as Sakabitz was. That's the thing. He's more interested in keeping these franchises all making money, and what they can do to help them put them in a position of being successful before we start adding another 3, 4, 5 franchises. That's coming, but it doesn't have to happen every year like we were doing here for a while. And I think that's a good idea. He's going to go and figure out his own footprint and, put together his prowess. And like I say, if you haven't seen Frank Stanisi in my little interview with the commissioner, it's only about 6.5 minutes because we were doing it in between rounds. And the league was nice enough to give us the commissioner to interview. He answered every question that we had point blank. There really was no skating around anything. It's more of a meet and greet, but we did have some poignant questions about where and what and how we're going to go. And he was very, very succinct on what he's going to do. And he's also, he'd only been in the job 2 weeks. So he wants to get an idea of the fans, of the organizations, of the people. But unlike Sakabitz, who had to learn the game, he was a leading scorer in Brown in his senior year. He knows how to play the game. So it's I think it's a plus, and I think this is where the league had to go for their next level to get. We were here, then we were here, now we're here. So I think Mike, you made a good point off air that Johnny Davis said probably in the next 5 years you're going to see an explosion. We're probably going to see that a little bit earlier than that if we go with where it is and everybody stays in their positions and does what they're focused to do. I think that we're already not on the ground floor anymore. We're starting the elevator starting to move upward.
Well, if I can make a point, pointed out during NFL's opening night, they mentioned the Mammoths Championship on their television broadcast. Like,
that's pretty cool.
When would that have happened? Like, we're on the map.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about you want to talk about that one? During the Stanley Cup Finals, while Colorado was playing, they put on the last 5 seconds of the Colorado Mammoth winning the championship in the Pepsi Center on their scoreboard, so the fans went ballistic that they just won another championship in lacrosse. When would you have seen that?
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And I think
it wouldn't have been that way 10, 15 years ago, would have, Gary? Like,
oh, God, no. We wouldn't have. Lacrosse? What's that? What's that? You're running around with a stick and a net. What's that? And it was the greatest kept secret in the world. It's out there now. And now it's starting to get marketed correctly, too. Now we got marketing people. Not just people trying to market, but we got specific marketing people doing this. So the same way that Brett Frew did NASCAR, he's going to do NLL. The same way Sakabitz was expanding Major League Soccer, he started expanding the NLL. So we got the right people at the right times doing the right things, which is entirely different than the early 2000s, where we had the wrong people doing the wrong things at the right times. So everything is flipped to the right. And I think there's nothing but upside from what I can see and from what I can feel. Were there some hitches in the draft yesterday? Yes, there were a few hitches. More technical than anything, glitches. Was it a first top-rate notch thing? Yes. Originally I was wondering why wouldn't they have it at track? They've done it before there. And why? Because they wanted it to be a big to-do. It's the first one back where people have been there since COVID. They wanted it to be a big to-do. They wanted it to be in a venue that looked like a venue. They wanted it to be like a major league draft, like an NFL, like an NHL. And it had that feel to it.
And correct me,
Is it-
Gary, it was streamed on TSN and ESPN too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. And like I say, was it as big? No, of course not. Let's not fool ourselves. But is it getting there? Yes. Sakavich said in my interview with him a year ago, the off air, he had mentioned that the NLL right now, a year ago, is like the NHL was just before the explosion. So you're talking about early 70s, mid 70s. You'd already had expansion. You already had some TV, but just before it became boom, and you had advertising dollars and marketing. Well, the advertising's coming in, and so is the marketing. So, from Grant, find improved television deals have helped greatly. If TSN could, some more of their network and not mostly on their app, be a good next step. Yeah, so we got to make sure that I think TSN was dipping their toe in. Same thing with ESPN. I think as they see that the numbers are going upward, you're going to see more than just a game of the week. But that's all we expected, really, was a game of the week from them. And we actually got a little bit more. And the extra added bonus in the summertime now is ABC's also picked up on the PLL. They had a game today on ABC. So, and I'm pretty sure the championship game
will be on ABC. Also. Yeah. Yep. Next Sunday, 3 p.m.
Yep. So,
how do you
go wrong with that, man? Because you're what do you take? You're competing against NFL, and you're going on ABC. Wow.
Yeah.
Like
you said, Gary, it's a good step. TS just getting streamed is a good step because we're not, playing around with these Bleacher Reports and all these like third parties that we just. Yeah.
Do you remember years ago when it was on the YouTube thing there or whatever? And you had the other one where you had to go onto the site and try and figure it out, and it would freeze more than it would be. Oh man, we've put up with some of the worst streaming and broadcasting over the years. We're still here. And then again, Sakavich tried a few things. He tried NLL TV to see if that would work as a pay thing. Then he went to Bleacher, right? The BR Live thing. And then, of course, now here we are with the TSN thing. Now, Jamie had TSN when he first bought the team, but that was entirely different. That wasn't TSN getting the rights. That was Jamie buying the airtime to put these games on. Totally different. And when TSN took it a number of years ago, again, they weren't convinced on it. They only took the late Western games, be Friday night at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. or after Division 5 college hockey was finished. And then, you'd catch the game. So it really wasn't given a fair shake. And also people weren't as savvy with their technology. Because, yes, you could have caught every game, but who knew how to get to the apps and who knew was your phone smart enough? Because I know the phone that I had back then, it basically had a rotary dial, for Christ's sake. So I don't think my phone could have done it if it would have gave me 2 tickets to the game. But say, yeah. And John's got a good point here. Thank you, John, for being consistent. But yeah, as for more sane comment there, ESPN had Mel years ago. Yes, but it was on ESPN2. It wasn't the main network where it is now, where it's ESPN and ESPN Plus. So, yes, it was a start. Talking with the old legends in Peterborough, don't forget that they had all the stuff that we're trying to fight for now. Decent pay, 40-game season. They had TV to a degree, but they had all the big venues also, and they were getting crowds of 15, 16,000. We got to get back to that. And the best way is what we're doing right now. And the TSN ESPN thing, where you're not going to get any bigger than that. And since they bought the rights, that's the big thing. Is now you have layers in how ownership can make money. Right? The big thing before was, you roll out a carpet, you open up the doors and go, please come. Please come. I'm not even going to tell you when the game is, please come. Because I don't remember seeing advertising anywhere. But now, first of all, the advertising is much better. Because I used to bang my head off the wall. It's like, if you're advertising during a game, aren't you preaching to the choir? We're here already. Or we're watching it. We already know it's here. You need to get on other channels at other times to do it. Very, very simple. So now, with them owning it, or owning the rights, So now the ownership gets money. Plus, you have the merchandising going through what's the name of that now? Fanatics, right? Fanatics.com. So there's another big organization marketing their stuff. So that's a bunch of big steps in the right direction. And now we're ready to go to the next one.
Maybe just take that just a step further too. Sorry, Gary. I know you want to probably get going here, but you mentioned the advertising, the TV deals, bringing in revenue for the owners. And as we've talked before, you don't really want to price out your fans, especially if you want
that's the other thing too.
higher salaries, longer season. Well, if you can bring in those incomes to the owners, now you don't have to pass on that price onto the fans itself.
You know, Mike, this is going to get legs sooner or later. TV and Bleacher were terrible, but at least they were something. At that point, at least they were something. And the one big thing about Bleacher was that he had every arena, including Rochester, which had the worst, upgrade to HD TV, which is why we have what we have now for these broadcasts. They didn't have to change anything. They're upgraded all to HD and everything else. So, you have reviews that are decent and you have broadcasts that are decent. Update on the Muffler Mike fan club. And your old has volunteered to be inaugural president. We have got legs on this thing now. We're going to have our first board meeting soon on how we're going to go forward and what cities Mike is going to start showing up in. A local grocery store near you. Oh my God. That's amazing. Oh God. Of course, John. The Muffler Mike theme song to the tune of Ice Ice Baby. Off air, John. Off air. Anyways, I want to leave it there for this week. It's been a great week. We got a lot of really great stuff again next week. We're going to continue our talk about what these teams need. We've only scratched the surface with a couple of teams. We got about 11 or 12 more to go on what needs it. You know that there's going to be some action and some movement now that the draft is finished, and they can concentrate on the month or so before they start getting into training camps. Because that's coming. That'll be the middle of next month, because by November they're going to have preseason games, and then we're into the season. It just flies by, But right now, we got a couple more Man Cup games. Hopefully, we have 4 more Man Cup games, maybe 5. That'd be great for me. I want to get out there to some of these. We have the PLL playoffs that are going to be on the finals next Sunday. So we will be on the air just after that finishes. So we'll be able to give you all the highs, all the lows, and everything in between. And everything else that has to do with lacrosse, we will be there for you. I want to thank Shawn Slaght over in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. I want to thank Muffler Mike Kostiuk over in Connecticut. Their articles are worth the time to read. Come check us out at All Lacrosse all the time. Come check us out at eopsports.com. We are there every day with new material, new articles, everything you need to know about lacrosse. And weren't afraid to ask. Until next week, guys, have a great week, and we will see you all soon.